Aloha. For this build, I wanted to get into one of the main questions that people have when they're presented with flat Earth, which is, what does it matter? Like, why does it matter? If the Earth is flat, if it's round, why does it matter? And then trace that back to basically the suppression of consciousness and how different layers of reality, mainstream reality in particular, how they're calibrated, how they're designed is to maintain a particular level of consciousness that isn't really, it's not designed to expand consciousness more than it's designed to contract consciousness. Just as you can understand, the mainstream media is very shallow, it's very weak, it's very empty. You have empty musicians, empty actors, empty celebrities, empty role models, empty education. The public education system is an empty intellectual system. It's not about research, it's not about investigation, it's not about truth on a level of truth that vibrates on like the psychological body or the spiritual body. It's about telling you a very shrunk down diet, aspartame version of the physical reality, and then glorifying that as if that is the end all be all of your universe. So they only have to tell you 10% of some kind of understanding of what's going on in our surroundings, which is basically like the periodic table of elements and just this kindergarten version of interpreting your reality. The thing is, you can build that up. What they've done is they've built that world up to, they built that 10% at best. They built that 10% of your reality. They've built it up to 100% illusion. They've filled that space with 90% like ego, bully mentality, victimizing itself. So those are the same mechanisms that people like Bill Nye and Neil deGrasse Tyson use against the mass population. So they use individuals, actors, they use comedians, they use politicians, they use scientists, they use all of teachers, they use all of these actual people to sell your consciousness to you at half price. The thing is, when you're buying things from that system at half price, that's actually signing a contract. It's signing a contract to be a part of their universe. Once you're a part of their universe, then you can celebrate what their universe is all about. So they tell you what to celebrate. They tell you to celebrate technology. They tell you to celebrate discovering the periodic table of elements. They tell you to celebrate the Big Bang. They tell you to celebrate gravity. All of these theories that are out there, they tell you to celebrate these worlds, and they don't really go into anything more than that, because anything more than that challenges their system. So something like religion doesn't really challenge the system. Religion may seem like it's challenging the system because it says like, oh, it doesn't believe in evolution, and well, some religions say that don't believe in evolution, and well, specifically to stay on focus, like the main fight that gets promoted in your mainstream consciousness is Bill Nye versus whoever the other guy is that backs up or defends like Christianity and the Bible's version of creation. So you have creation versus evolution, and creation basically represents religions or Christianity, or the biggest, or whatever, you understand what I'm saying. So you have this fight. The thing is, it's not a real fight. It's a fixed fight. It's made up. The Bible, Christianity, all this stuff was made up to create villains and superheroes. So back in the day, religion or the church was the superhero against the villain that was the state or the monarchy. And at the same time, they were working together. So you can see how the game was being played back then. So they said the monarchy was empowered by God. Like they're kings and queens over you because they were empowered by God. Or even in some cases, they say that they're the lineage of some kind of God. So they have the right to destroy you. They have the right to make you live impoverished. They have the right to wear all of these golds. They have the right to enslave you, basically. So that's where they got their power from. And people believed in that because that was the level of consciousness that people were at. But now that the level of consciousness has been shifting, they got to shift from villain to superhero and also shift the actual mechanism of what you're focusing on. So now people are worshiping the monarchy and they're demonizing the church. So this is the perfect example of the Hegelian dialectic. So you can see this with Democrats and Republicans. They play off one another every 4 to 8 years. So you have a Democratic president, then you have a Republican president. And the people don't have any option in that. You're not voting for these people. They're picking these people in order to maintain a level of consciousness. So back in the day, you had the church and the state, or the church and the monarchy. You had the villain and the superhero. And now today you have the same thing, except today's version of that is backed up by, it's the religion of scientism, which is acting out as the superhero. And the new villain is the so-called like the idiots who believe in creationism and all this other stuff. The thing is, that's a whole movie being played out, because what's being distracted from is the fact that you're not really going into the information itself and thinking for yourself. You're thinking through a middleman. You're thinking through a salesperson. So you have these salespeople like Bill Nye and Neil deGrasse Tyson for scientism. Then you have these salespeople, pastors and preachers for the church. And since most people, the majority of people, is like 95% of the people believe in some kind of God or are part of some kind of religion, whereas the rest are believing in science, and it's only basically atheism. It's like there's nothing, there's no soul. Excuse me. There's no soul, there's no nothing other than the physical reality. That's the essence of what people like Bill Nye and Neil deGrasse Tyson are selling through the university system and the scientism religion to the mass population, so they can set up the next mind control program of transhumanism, simulation theory, and activate all this CERN quantum programming and the simulation theory and all this stuff that makes more profit for the system. So you have all these different mechanisms that exist to maintain a particular level of consciousness. What happens there is that people don't think for themselves. Once you're locked into that reality, you're not, for so long, so many generations, so many centuries of mind control programming, you're not allowed to think. You're not allowing yourself to think for yourself. You can't critically think. And even if you are in that space and you think you're thinking somebody else's thoughts. You're regurgitating whatever Neil deGrasse Tyson is saying, whatever Bill Nye is saying, whatever some preacher is saying, whatever some book said. You're regurgitating it. You're not thinking for yourself. That's exactly what the system wants to keep people from doing, is because if you start thinking for yourself, you will think your way out of the limited level of consciousness that this system needs you to be in order to be enslaved. So you need to be begging for jobs. You need to be vesting your energy in thinking that you're voting for a president. You need to be proud of this system. You need to defend this system. So this is why you have people out there, when they're presented with information like flat earth, basically you're telling somebody that your entire universe was a joke. Your universe that you think you live in is a lie. And that's basically telling somebody like you're full of shit. Like an individual, a grown man or a grown woman walking up to them and being like, look, dude, your whole life is full of shit. Everything that you thought you believed in is just full of shit, and it doesn't exist the way you think it does. So you can see in that space how somebody can feel lost. And that's exactly where the system wants people to be. They want people to be lost. They want people to be floating in a universe of limbo where they don't think for themselves. They have no meaning and no purpose. They have no drive. They have no goals. They have nothing. Nothing in their universe is generated from their own level of consciousness from a soul perspective. Their own deeper levels of consciousness. So the world around them is so shallow, it's so empty, it's so broken that it produces broken people. And those broken people have a broken consciousness. And once you have broken people, that's another level of slavery. Like poverty, is another level, another style of slavery. So if you have broken people, then you can allow poverty to exist, because the broken people believe in the broken system, and the broken system only moves at the speed of evolution, at the speed of technology, at the speed of scientism, at the speed of Barack Obama, at the speed of Donald Trump, at the speed of Hillary Clinton, at the speed of democracy, at the speed of capitalism, at the speed of this broken ass level of consciousness that has no connection to nature. And that's the main point with this whole thing, circling back to the question that people are presented with, or present you with when you bring up flat earth to them, is what does it all matter? That's a very heavy thing. Like to analyze that, because there's so many other questions. Excuse me. Apologies for me I'm getting over a little head cold right now. But there's so much information. I mean, I had to make this video right now. I couldn't wait. So, or I make this little build right now. So we have, excuse me, you have somebody bringing flat earth to somebody else. They get so frustrated. They get so defensive. They're so floating. They're floating in a space of limbo where there's nothing to grab onto. They're so vulnerable. They're in a fight basically between this universe and that universe. And the individual usually who's bringing up flat earth it's not like selling anything other than the question of critical thought. And that's where I want to emphasize for people in the so-called flat earth community is to keep it there. That's a more powerful space to be, is in a world of critical thought, being open to discover. Being open to discover something new. See, when you jump into a flat earth model, and you need to hold on to all this stuff, you're just creating another version. You're getting ahead of yourself. You're creating another version, another world based on the same old world mind control programs that have the same effect on people. So why would you do that when it's not really about creating another world or creating another map or creating another version of what the system had already created? It's about critically thinking for yourself so that you will no longer be subjected to this kind of mind control programming. But if you want to invest your energy in another map, in another projection, in another dogma, then by all means, I mean, nobody else is going to teach you or get you out of that space. That's going to be on you until you get out of that space. My point being is the majority of people here who are even entertaining something like flat earth information or not globe information have entered into a world of critical thought that is based upon, that's anchored in your own consciousness, not somebody else's consciousness, because the system, the universe that is created by this mind control program, this parasitic consciousness, this is it's meant to shrink down. It's meant to suck you in and shrink you down. It's not meant to help you expand. It's meant to lock you down. So, excuse me. Back to the question. What does it matter? Why does the shape of the earth matter? And that's the whole point. It's not about the shape of the earth. And that's how you can see how shallow people are. They're caught up in the what. Still trying to transition from the who to the what. And I've spoken about this in previous builds, talking about how you have the way the mainstream flat earth world is right now. The mainstream flat earth world is all about the model, flat versus globe. We're smarter than you because we think for ourselves. It's another ego trip. It's another like, oh, I'm going to take you down because you're dumb. These people aren't dumb. Like, I wasn't dumb. I was just ignorant when I didn't know about this information. So people aren't dumb, especially people in the flat earth community, so-called community right now, talking shit about people who still believe in the globe. Man, you was thinking about that shit. You wasn't even at all thinking about flat earth 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. You was just as so-called dumb as they are. So take a look at yourself when you start talking all that garbage out there and then priding yourself and, oh, I'm the king of this shit. You know, I'll be taking people out like this. Man, get the hell out of here with that nonsense. You're wasting time right now. Help people critically think instead of helping people create another version of an ego, another synthetic ego. That's all it is. People back in the day like Neil deGrasse Tyson defending the globe model. He's defending an illusory ego. Like he's enveloped in an illusory universe, and he's created that pompous ass ego. Like, look at the Stephen Colbert interview. I couldn't even finish it. Like, I cannot hear his voice. I can't see his face anymore. It literally sits in my chest, and I'm just like, man, I want to vomit right now because of how fake this dude is. He's not even like, he doesn't even seem to be a human anymore. Like it's so far out of humanity, and that's also what it goes into. That's also what this question ties into of what does it matter, which is how I was thinking about it last night, is that what does it matter when somebody sets their lips and their voice box up to say that? They had to already create a whole bunch of thoughts in their mind to generate the vibrations to actually say that. Before that, they had to be so separated from their spiritual consciousness to develop those thoughts in that illusory universe. And what that means is that the way you can get separated, one way you can get separated from your spiritual consciousness is to lock yourself into an illusory consciousness or an illusory universe. Another way is to separate you from nature. And both of those things are going on right now. They're destroying nature for profit, stealing resources, colonizing all the lands, genociding people, installing the fiat currency system, installing the maritime admiralty system, installing the legal name program, installing all of these control mechanisms to maintain slavery on the soul, the mind, and the body level. Every kind of mind control, soul mind control, psychological mind control, physical mind control, people filling their bodies with poisons. Fast food everywhere is this kind of like this weapon against people. The mainstream media as this weapon against the psychology of people, the consciousness of people. These religions that are out there as a weapon against the spiritual consciousness of people. You have all of these. This is a very complex, a very intelligent, destructive intelligence that is out there taking people out. And making people take themselves out. That's exactly what's happening right now. You get so locked into one version of reality that you are not even you anymore. In fact, you never knew who you were, and you sure as hell don't know who you are right now. And one thing that connecting with nature and connecting with your spirit in an organic fashion, like through the inside out, this is what shaman do. Shaman go out into the forest and they live in the forest for a certain amount of time. And they learn all of their shamanic work from being on their own in nature. They don't think about anything. They don't do anything. This is the benefit. These are the benefits of people who disappear for a while. They go out in nature. The people are doing that, and this is not a requirement, but this is one possibility that you could do in order to tap into a deeper layer of yourself. And see, this is what psychedelics do in a more concentrated version. So in reference to like people who understand the difference between DMT and ayahuasca, in reference to, obviously DMT is the chemical that's triggered by ayahuasca. But what I'm saying is that the trip itself, when you do just straight DMT, it only lasts like 15 minutes. When you go into an ayahuasca trip, it can last like 5 hours. So, but you're in the same space basically, which is yourself, a deeper layer of yourself. So you can see the difference between 15 minutes and 5 hours. The trip on ayahuasca is a whole lot more, it's a lot less intense in reference to it's drawn out over 5 hours, and you're more aware of your body. You're more aware of yourself. You're more aware overall. Whereas in DMT, you're hit and you're in that space for 15 minutes and you're still there. You're still aware, but it's so intense that it's a very obvious difference between that trip and ayahuasca. So now imagine, so you can see those two differences, 15 minutes, 5 hours. Now imagine not taking anything. Excuse me. Not taking anything and being in nature by yourself for 5 weeks, 10 weeks, however many months. Like, imagine being connected to this reality. That is another trip. You're completely aware of yourself, even more so. You're shifting into another gear of awareness that you didn't even know was there, because you've trapped yourself in whatever comfort level that you've been used to for the years prior to that. So that will affect your level of consciousness. This is why shamans come back from their journey and they have all this information. Where did that information come from? You think they went out to the rainforest and went to like kindergarten, or they went to like 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, or something like that? No. They got a degree out there. There's like a Neil deGrasse Tyson or a Bill Nye out there teaching them some kind of science class. Where is that information coming from? Where is all that healing energy coming from? Where are all these perspectives coming from? It's coming from the individual and the relationship to this experience. The relationship between the experience and the experiencer. The thing is, with heliocentrism and the public education system, the university system, all these illusions is that, and even to the extreme of like worshiping the body, the physical reality, like putting all these fake plastic surgeries and all this stuff, like that's how much your consciousness has been shrunk down to the fear of looking a certain way in certain situations. Like, you're so far from yourself. It's sickening. It's disgusting. So that's an example of the suppression of consciousness in order to give a good example of why the indigenous people across the world had to been genocided, had to been slaughtered, colonized, taken out, have to be demonized as savage, primitive, heathens. This is another reason why they can't connect any of the ancient structures or the ancient practices to and intelligence of those people, because they have to protect their theory of evolution. They have to protect their theory of being more advanced than them. They have to protect these theories. They have to protect those theories by demonizing the people, the people. And that's not only there, it's not only to protect them, but also to maintain dormancy, conscious dormancy, so people cannot critically think for themselves. You're not allowed to think for yourself if the status quo of your surroundings, all your peers, is based upon regurgitating somebody else's thoughts, based upon another illusory universe. So the relationship between the experience and the experiencer is presented to us more obviously when you get high, when you take psychedelics. This is why these are criminalized. When you get high, when you're smoking weed, or when you're ingesting cannabis is a better way to explain it. When you're ingesting cannabis in any kind of way into your endocannabinoid system, what that's doing is it's just upping your sensitivity to your experience, it's upping your relationship connection to the experience. The bridge between the experience and the experiencer gets more vibrant. So you can feel more, you can smell more, you can taste more, you can say more, everything becomes more. And this is from a plant. The same thing like psilocybin, it's a plant. These are natural doorways to a deeper level of consciousness. But it's just a doorway. It's like the difference between a diet and a medicine, like Alan Watts was talking about. There's a difference between a diet and a medicine. A medicine is designed to be this prescription drug. A diet is something forever. It's a lifestyle. Whereas you have these sick people who are constantly looking for their fix, addicted to that medication, addicted to that medicine. They need a fix. And the system of control knows this. So it has set up a system based upon addiction, a system based upon that program. So they could only do that if they've at first have owned all of the resources. So in that sense, they have to conquer. So this was the first programming. They had to conquer everybody. Everybody who was different than, who didn't want to play their game, you needed to be either demonized or conquered. Anybody whose intelligence challenged the very nature of that illusory reality, they needed to be put in some kind of box, put in some kind of jail, or taken out all completely. Now, once that has happened, then they need to be demonized. Well, actually, when it's happening, that actually gives them the authority to take them out. So when Christopher Columbus came over to the Taino people in so-called Puerto Rico right now, and that's the name the Spanish gave them, the Port of Riches. That's what the Spanish gave them. But the Taino people, the original people, are actual people. See, that's another mind control program. See, you're still calling your just the same way people are calling themselves their slave name. Like even me right now, I have my legal name is a slave name. It comes from the slave master back in the mid 1800s. So you have entire races of people who are calling themselves slave names. So you have the so-called African Americans. That's a slave mentality. We weren't brought over here from Africa. We was already here. So that's a slave mentality. It's a slave psychology. The same thing with the Taino people in so-called Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is a Spanish slave name for the Taino people. Yet it's accepted as today's reality because over so many generations, we've been beat down and locked in to accepting this mind control program. And we can't let that go because the status quo is what? The status quo is to go along. Don't rock the boat. Don't question the smartest monkeys in the universe. Don't question any of this reality. If you do, you will be dealt with. You will be taken out in some kind of way. You'll be demonized. You'll be shifted. Whatever it is, you'll be put somewhere because you are not playing by their rules. Anybody who doesn't play by their rules will be dealt with. So looping this all the way back. So like I said, like they have to first take you out. The only way they can be justified in taking you out, the indigenous people, is to have the evolution theory, to say that they're just not evolved. Look at the suit that I'm wearing. Look at my tie. Look at this car that I'm driving. How could you not say that we are not, how could you not say that we are more evolved than them? Isn't it obvious to see? So they've made their entire world, their entire consciousness doesn't exist on its own. It exists in theory and exists in comparison to. Those are the two main things that hold up this illusory universe. It exists in theory, evolution theory, Big Bang theory, gravity theory, relativity theory, dinosaur theory, asteroid theory, panspermia theory, all of these theories. It exists in theories and in comparison to the way of life of the indigenous people. And since the theoretical world or the theoretical universe has genocided and slaughtered those people, they have said, oh, well, we're not bad people. We don't have something wrong with us. We're just more evolved than them. And our evolution is based upon how much destruction we can inflict on other people. Their evolution is based upon destructive intelligence. It's not based upon creative intelligence. It's based upon destroying consciousness, destroying people, destroying the relationships that you have with each other, with yourself, and with nature. And that goes all the way back to the question that I brought up earlier, which is why people can't even entertain something like flat earth, is because everybody has been, or the majority of people have been locked so deeply into that illusory universe that they themselves are an illusion. They have so little meaning and purpose. There's no meaning and purpose outside of the system that has been generated by these genocidal maniacs. So when people are presented with another perspective of a universe, which is not even solid yet, nobody's saying exactly what the flat earth is and all that. Nobody's saying that yet. It's still very early. People are still just saying, look, think for yourself. Stop believing NASA. Stop believing people like Neil deGrasse Tyson. Stop believing Bill Nye and Michio Kaku. Stop buying all their Happy Meal toys of transhumanism and iPhone 20s and iPhone this and virtual reality that, and whatever it is. People are being bought and sold. Their consciousness have been bought and sold, and it's been locked into this suppression consciousness, so much so that we have no roots. We have no connection, no foundation. You have no understanding of your past, because the education system said, no. You need to be proud of Christopher Columbus. The very fact that exists should be a red flag. A huge red flag should be going up in your head. If you were in school and they were selling you Christopher Columbus like he was some damn superhero, a giant red flag should go over the last 500 years, if that's the case. And that is the case. The only thing is that people can't entertain that reality because they believe in evolution, They believe in the evolution theory and the whole like, we're not primitive, savage, indigenous people. We drive cars. We're going to space. We're going to Mars. Hell, we went to the moon. Don't you have a computer? Don't you have a laptop? See, when I start talking about racism and I start talking about the Western so-called civilization, those are other people's main responses. Kind of similar to the response that people have to flat Earth is the response of, well, what does it matter? People have nothing to respond with. There's nothing there. So they have to resort to childhood mentalities of, well, I know you are, but what am I? I know you are, but what am I? That's all it is. It's just like, well, what are you saying then? It's like, look, wait a second. Before this conversation, you didn't even at all have an idea that these assholes were lying to you. You didn't even have at all an idea that this universe was an illusion. And you automatically want to jump into this, I know you are, but what am I? Like, what is your universe about? Oh, if it's flat, then why don't you just fall off the edge? Why don't you see how childish that shit is? That's like some Pee Wee Herman shit. But that's the mainstream reality, and it's been set up through all of these movies, these activists that they put in, these celebrities that they put in front of your kids, the pop culture. Neil deGrasse Tyson, he's a pop culture. He's not even like a scientist. He's a pop culture magician. That's what he is. Bill Nye is a pop culture magician. These are alchemists. And they're alchemists for a universe that is destructive in nature because it's based upon suppressing consciousness. That's how they make their money. So I keep going back to the question, but I never really go into like where I'm coming from with it. So well, I do, but it's just keep getting sidetracked. But anyway, so the question, back to the original question. What or why does it matter? That's a very heavy question to be asking and answering. I've shared a lot of perspectives on that in the past, in previous builds, videos. For people who are listening to this on Soundcloud, I've been speaking on YouTube for the last like 4-5 years now. There's a lot of information on there. So I'm going to relate to a lot of information that's going to be coming from that catalog of information that I've shared in previous builds. For people who are listening to this on YouTube, you know where I'm coming from. But why does it matter? Okay, why does it matter? It matters because the very nature of this universe is based upon separating you, the experiencer, from the experience, the individual from nature. Once you have been separated from nature, you are now vulnerable. Once you've been, no different than sexism that has been created for this patriarchal program of mind control. And then once that was perfected, once the divine feminine was beat down and the masculine the patriarchal system was built up, then you can get more complex. That's where racism came in. So they first need to separate the man from the woman. Now they need to get more complex and separate nations from nations, people from people. And then even more complex, you separate the individual from themselves. So from themselves. Themselves. Which is shit like the terminology African American. It's an illusion. It doesn't exist. So you have all of these people, all of these programs. Look how heavy that program is. You have people being separated from themselves, from thinking that they're a slave, thinking that they're from somewhere else. They don't have any idea about history. They think that their ancestors were primitive, savage, disgusting, not evolved things. There's nothing there to grab onto. Then you have racism. Racism, which separates people, and then that goes into a deeper, more complex version of separating you from yourself. But you have these very different, beautifully diverse differences of people across the earth plane. That's on purpose. It's like having the differences of flowers out there. You wouldn't want to have one flower everywhere, would you? And that's what I'm saying with this whole new age unity and one. We're all human. That's obvious in one sense, but you have to understand that is definitely going to be used and is already being used as another mind control program to keep you from empowering yourself with the understanding, understanding, and overstanding of the differences of who and what we are. So they just take you, if you say that, if you just say, oh, well, I'm not about saying we're not human. I'm about saying we're also empowered by the lineage of our ancestors. We're empowered by the experiences of the people that have lived and died before us. And the historical books that this mainstream system puts into our reality is based upon, they are based upon keeping us from making that connection. Another way to keep us from making that connection is to get caught up in their version of I know you are, but what am I? Version of that, which is racism. So they created racism to set the foundation for so-called white supremacy. White supremacy is one of the main core values of colonialism. Colonialism and white supremacy sets the tone for being more evolved than the indigenous people across the world. So when I address racism, I'm not talking about, oh yeah, these people are better than that. No, you only think that because the very nature of racism was designed. It was installed into the consciousness to maintain that mentality that we as white people, we are superior to you fucking animals. Look at my skin tone, bitch. It's the same as Jesus Christ. Look at that picture on the wall in your church. You're praying to me. Fuck you. You animal, you heathen, you savage, you primitive. I'm God in this bitch. Kiss my ass. What does that do to 9/10 of the people of this experience? 9/10 of the people being the melanated people across the earth. They have no meaning and no purpose. They're full of self-hatred. They're full of guilt from Catholic guilt. You're born in sin. You see how this system works now. It's designed to maintain those mechanisms. So, racism, just like sexism, was designed to create another gap in your reality, another separation, another way to control you and masses of people. So when I talk about racism, I'm talking about racism to bring light to how this mind control program affects us today. To bring light to it. See, people want to take that medication of, I'm a human. We're all human. I don't talk about race anymore because shut the fuck up with all that nonsense, that old simple nonsense. That's that new age mainstream version of not wanting to look at the real history, not wanting to acknowledge what really led up to today. I saw a picture of Emma Watson on Instagram holding up a book that was entitled something like, Why I Don't Talk About Racism Anymore. Get the hell out of here with that, with all that. What happens when you don't talk about something? It gets worse. It gets worse. So, That is the main thing. See, what gets worse when you don't talk about your ancestry? When you don't talk about racism, sexism, the origins of this programming, the psychological mind control programs that this system banks on gets worse inside of you. That worseness, that worseness is actually, it's a benefit to the system, because the further and further you get separated from yourself, the more sick you get in this system from not acknowledging or looking at or really understanding what's going on in this world. The more sick you get, the more separated you get. And that's money in the bank for this system. It's money in the bank. And they need that. So all of these systems are designed to maintain that level of consciousness. So all of these are just microcosms of the macrocosm of separating you from nature, separating you from your spirit, your soul, your mind, and your body. Everything needs to be reversed, flipped, upside down, and sold to you in a new dress, in a new suit, in a new car, in a new theory. This system has the answers for everything. Everything, anything you can bring up, they got an answer for it. And that's the same kind of like I said earlier. The answer is, I know you are, but what am I? So when you say, why are you selling these theories to people as facts? Just because it backs up like you need it? You're going to lose your meal ticket if you get revealed that all these things that you're selling to us as facts are actually theories. You're not going to get that tax money. You're not going to get this. You're not going to get that. You're not going to be a scientific celebrity. You're not going to be the science guy, Bill Nye the Science Guy, fucking mechanical engineer, bachelor having ass. I can be the science guy. Shit, some bullshit. Anybody can be the science. He's an actor. That dude is an actor. It's a title, a pop title. Bill Nye the Science Guy is like a theory. It's like the theory of gravity. The science guy is like gravity itself. But since they put him on Netflix, now that theory becomes factual, because his theoretical universe was only he was only the science guy when he didn't have when he had like a show that nobody was watching. When they put him on television, that's when his theoretical science guy reality became factual. And when they upped the ante and put him on Netflix, that's when those theories, just like gravity and all that other stuff, becomes fact. Because they punk you, they bully you. And you can listen to even Bill Nye always talk, come on, guys. Are we really talking about flat earth here? Come on. Like that whole stupid ass shit. Like, it's a bully mentality. It's like, oh, you're really going to listen to them? Come on. I'm the science guy. What do you mean? That's why they made him up. Bill Nye the Science Guy is like Tony the Tiger for Frosted Flakes. It ain't mean shit. In fact, them Frosted Flakes is gonna kill your ass eventually. It's some bullshit. So all of their mechanisms that they have, it's not about what's been going on in the last few years with flat versus globe. It's about understanding how these mind control programs are so diverse in nature and have been existing for centuries. If you don't come at it from that perspective, you're going to be playing checkers in a 3-tiered chess game, while flat versus globe is a horizontal, a linear chess game at best. At best. So you go from checkers to playing chess to understanding that it's not just a flat chess game. Black versus white, king versus king. It's a 3-tiered chess game, like an interdimensional chess game. The physical, the body, the soul, or the body, the mind, and the soul. There's a chess game being played for each layer of that reality. And we can't even understand it because we're too busy trying to wait for somebody else to tell us what our universe is all about. And that's the main point, to have people not thinking for themselves. And they can't think for themselves because they have no infrastructure. They have no foundations. They have no connection with their root structure. And that's why I said it's so important to tap into the historical observations of this reality to see how these mind control programs have grown to what they are today. So that's for the people who have all these, get all butthurt when I mention racism, or I mention like colonialism, or I mention any of the other systems that have been going on, like Rome itself, the bread and circus, the monarchy, like any of these programs that are out there to maintain the same kind of consciousness that systems like NASA maintain. Like, what was the NASA back in the year 200? What was the NASA back in the BC time frames? In fact, your relationship with time itself is a version of NASA. So, to close this out and to get back to what I was talking about in reference to the original question, why does it matter? That's a very telling thing. I mean, and I bring that up because there's so many people that I've seen online and that I've seen in person that have that same response. And what that response is an example of is an individual who is in that I know you are, but what am I? They're getting ready to go into that I know you are, but what am I perspective. Or I didn't finish out before I get back there. I didn't finish what I was saying before. So once you bring light to the system's illusions, their defense mechanism is to say, well, you're just saying illusions too. You don't have a real flat earth model. You don't have this. You don't have that. You don't have anything that is beyond any kind of theory. The point is, neither do you. Your heliocentric universe is based upon the same thing you're charging the so-called flat earthers with. It's based upon theory. At least our theories are open to asking questions of this reality. You assholes have said our theories are facts. And if you don't believe in our theories as facts, then you're crazy. Oh, you're just a crazy kook that wants to think for themselves. It's nonsense. It's literally, I know you are, but what am I? That is their last, that last finger holding on to the edge of control over the masses, is resorting back to childhood tendencies. No different than an argument. You can have somebody have a discussion with somebody else. Two people have a discussion for 3 hours. Once one person gets to a point of defensiveness and they have nowhere else to go, backed into a corner because this ego can't fight that ego anymore, they automatically start getting loud, emotional, and childish. And it goes into, I know you are, but what am I? That's what the system is right now. That's who Neil deGrasse Tyson is. That's who Bill Nye is. Barack Obama, and anybody else who's protecting this heliocentric theory, this heliocentric illusion, this heliocentric mind control program. So how that ties into the very nature of your separation from reality as a whole is that when people respond to your question of, hey, even family members, you can be close to these people and they'll still lose their shit. That's how strong this mind control program of pop culture, mainstream media, heliocentrism has over people. That's how strong this is. Your closest friends and family members will turn on you in a heartbeat because they themselves have not one leg to stand on. You're literally in another universe. You're in another universe, and you're asking somebody else to challenge the universe that they're in, which is very difficult for people because you're asking somebody to change. And that's the hardest thing to do in any universe, is to change, because the easiest thing to do is to stay the same. So it's two things that people are having to deal with. They're having to challenge themselves to get out of that comfort zone, which is the easiest thing to do. Oh, it's just easy. I'm just going to do my job. Just do this. You know, that's the status quo. That's what the system has presented to people to do. Just be minimum wage consciousness. Don't ask for anything more than minimum wage consciousness. If you ask for anything more than that, you're ungrateful for this Western civilization that we've given to you. So you have people who are not wanting to leave that comfort zone and also not wanting to change, period. That's another gear. Those are two different things. One thing is to not want to change. The other thing is to actually change, to be open to change first. And that's the hardest shit to do. And yeah, people that's what people are struggling with. I mean, everybody who's entertaining or at least looking into flat earth information right now knows what I'm talking about, because the majority of people who are looking into flat earth information or not globe information, they initially went into that world because they were trying to debunk it. They were trying to debunk flat earth. Like me personally, and a lot of people say this too. Like, I was doing the same thing. I was like, wait a second. When my friend told me, hey, have you looked into flat earth stuff? I was like, no, what are you talking about? So my response, what are you talking about? That is me saying, oh shit, I might have to check this out. So you're either going to go into it by being open to it, knowing that NASA.gov ain't worth a damn, and all the other programs that are out there are based upon illusions and mind controlling you. So you're presented with the opportunity to change your relationship with the universe, which is changing your relationship with yourself. So you go into this information attempting to debunk this information, and then once you realize that you've only debunked the heliocentric universe, now you're in a space of critical thinking. What I'm saying is that that's the best place to be. You don't need to shift into a model, the next gear of a model theory. You don't need to shift into like, oh, well, this connects to the Bible or this connects to this. And you don't need to do that. Just think about how long it's actually going to take to really try to really understand what's really going on here. It's not going to happen in 2 years. It ain't going to happen it ain't going to happen when the mainstream media starts entertaining flat earth. They're going to give you some Gatorade version of flat earth. They're going to give you some saltines crackers version of flat earth. They don't give you any kind of like real depth of what this reality is. And even if they do give you some kind of depth, like talking about simulation theory or transhumanism or quantum theory, even if they do go there, it's going to be a KFC version of flat earth. Whereas you're happy that you have KFC because you was just eating Ritz crackers before. You was just drinking Gatorade before, thinking that you were getting some kind of electrolytes. Like, no, that shit's to take you out, man. All that high fructose corn syrup, and all that salt and sugar in your system, that's designed to take you out for the long run. But they're going to sell you KFC, but not everybody can pay for KFC. So what do you do when you can't buy KFC? You worship KFC. You're like, oh man, wow. I love how smart you guys sound. You guys are, I wish I could think like that, like Neil deGrasse. I wish I knew that information. I'm going to buy his book. #1 best-selling book on the whatever chart list. Like they didn't put his ass up there like they do with all these other presidents that they put in this office. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. So they're going to give you some crackers and some Gatorade, but what they're going to sell you is KFC. And we all know KFC is full of shit and it's going to take you out. And not to mention KFC with all that pink ribbon shit. Like basically KFC putting a pink ribbon on a bucket of chicken that's going to give you cancer is like the government telling you we need to combat global warming because the earth is getting warm and, you know, we need to do all this other shit. It's a mind control program within a mind control program. It's a dream within a dream. And people believe in it. People wearing these pink ribbons and putting pink ribbon magnets on their cars and stickers on their notebooks and all this. I'm in solidarity with fighting cancer. Oh, yeah? You ain't gonna question anything about a pink ribbon being on a bucket of chicken cancer? You ain't gonna question anything about a pink ribbon being on a fracking drill? Like any of the, you ain't gonna question any of that shit? So they make you worship your own demise. And your own demise, your backwards, your de-evolution is profitable to this system. And they make money off of your ignorance. And that's money, whether it's literal money or psychological or spiritual money, which is control over you, to be gods and kings over you because you can't think for yourself. And you can't think for yourself because every single root structure that has come before today has been destroyed, ripped up, demonized, and you have been simultaneously sucked into a universe that you need to worship and defend and glorify as the most evolved version of reality. Once you're locked into that world, it's hard. It's hard as hell to get out of there. It's a slim to none chance that you're gonna get out of there because how hard is it for somebody to change? That's how hard is it to, how hard it is to get out of that universe, that consciousness. Ask somebody to change. Ask somebody to stop abusing themselves. Ask somebody to stop being an asshole. Ask somebody to stop, just glorifying their ego. Ask somebody to stop being whatever, pop culture. See how hard that is, how long that's going to take? Now multiply that times all of the people that are here in this experience right now. And then see how hard that is. And then multiply it times generations upon generations of mind control. Then you'll see how long it's going to take to actually make some headway in this shifting of consciousness and how hard it's going to be for people to actually change. And you'll also see what this system is going to do to halt that change in some kind of way, to stifle that change. So when somebody says, why does it matter? What does it matter? In reference to flat earth, they're really showing you an example of how far humanity has been separated from nature. How far humanity has been sucked into an artificial universe and sucked out of their spiritual consciousness, their psychological consciousness, their physical consciousness, sucked into the checker game of self-destruction. That's what that question tells you. And when you have that as the main response, you can see that as a software program installed in people. That if that's happening all over the place, if that response is happening all over the place, you have to see that as like a malware, as a virus, a parasite. It's not just happening. It's on purpose. My question to people who are understanding that is, what is that purpose? Why is that happening that way? And what are we going to do about it individually? I mean, because you only have power to change yourself, but you have the opportunity, you have the ability to help people. You can plant seeds. They might not germinate right off the bat, but at least you exist. You yourself are a seed. You're a seed of life. And the way you experience your reality is an activated seed, a germinated seed for other people to either germinate or not germinate, to either expand their consciousness or not expand their consciousness, to grow or not grow. And what makes money in this synthetic universe is to have people sit in the dirt as a seed, all that potential energy as a conscious seed, and not grow. So they take that potential energy, they take that potential energy and turn it into kinetic energy through the illusions of your universe. So you have all these seeds sitting dormant under the soil, dreaming about being alive, dreaming about growing, dreaming about being in space and going to Mars and doing all this other stuff. Constantly dreaming, living in the future. And the only way you can live in the future is if you have no understanding of the present moment and you have no understanding of your past. You can't go anywhere if you don't know where you've been. You can't do anything if you don't know what you've done already. That's basically the definition of history repeating itself. And as long as history keeps repeating itself, people can make a profit off of that. So my question after all of that, and I'll leave this for the next video, in reference to the suppression of consciousness, is what would the world be like without all of these mind control programs? Like, look at racism, for example. Racism is not just a thing that exists in people's psyche. Look how racism affects innovation, how racism affects inventions, growth. Like, look at how many inventions were invented by slaves, so-called black people back in the day, that were stolen by slave masters, that were stolen by so-called white people, patented by so-called, just no different than what they did to Tesla, the government did to Tesla. The same thing the government, and that's why I get it's so difficult. It's so difficult for me to understand why people can't even understand how important it is to understand what racism and how racism affects the consciousness. You can see what the government did to Tesla's work. How could you not see that same kind of style of interaction that they had with Tesla is the same thing that happened to the suppression of not white people, to defend the superiority complex of white supremacy? They took all that information, put it in a vault somewhere, released it timely based upon on the level of consciousness they wanted people to grow with. They didn't want people to grow at the speed of wireless technology in the 40s and 50s. They want people to grow at the speed of direct current, DC energy, in that time frame, so they can make a profit off of that. Because if Tesla stuff was back then, they would have made like $2. you're going to give somebody, if you had the opportunity to make $200 trillion over 50 years or $2 over 50 years, what are you going to do if you're a piece of shit, destructive intelligence individual who's going to sell out to this destructive universe? You're going to buy your time, you're going to slow down the entire consciousness, and you're going to work for that $200 trillion or whatever it is. And that's exactly what happened right now. So in reference to racism, a lot of people say, see, that's this new age, and that's another proof of this new age mechanism is to look the other way. When you have people like Emma Watson, who is also speaking at the United Nations. So she's a thing now. She's a thing in society. She's on Instagram holding up a book that says, "Why I Don't Talk About Racism Anymore." A lot of people, most people ain't going to read that book. They're not going to know what she's actually saying. They're going to get the download of why you shouldn't talk about racism. Just don't talk about it. It's just going to get worse. The system is not going to be acknowledged for what happened. The roots are not going to be traced back to why it was created, because you're too busy talking about what's going on. You're not going into how it went on, how it's going on, and why it went on, and why it's going on right now. Stuck in that shallow layer of consciousness, that Barney, that Sesame Street, Fraggle Rock ass consciousness that is not going to allow you to think outside of any other consciousness other than the one that's presented to you on a cereal box. So look at the mind control program. You can see people who are entertaining the idea of flat earth in reference to heliocentrism. You can understand that that's a mind control program. So racism, that's a mind control program. If heliocentrism has affected the consciousness of people for how many generations, how the hell do you think racism has affected people and is still affecting people? And if you can go through all that effort, all those tests and all those videos of disassembling heliocentrism for the benefit of flat earth, why the hell can't you do that same thing for disassembling racism for the benefit of all people? It's not for just black people. Obviously, racism was used in the colonial mindset to set up the foundation for the so-called powers that be of today. Colonialism, eugenics, gentrification of today, depopulation. That's where racism comes in. So the same way the system and people allow those racist programs to exist today is the same kind of effect that when people like Christopher Columbus came back to the throne and said, oh, well, those Taino people, they're just primitive savages. So we have the right to go conquer their land, steal their gold, and plant our seeds over there and just kill them. That's the same kind of mentality. They said, oh, well, they're not shit. They're not anything. So they deserve what they get. They deserve to be genocided. Just like today, when people are talking about the injustices against melanated people of today with police brutality and so on and so forth. People are saying, oh, well, you guys are thugs and gangsters anyway, so you just deserve that shit. Who the hell's saying that? The people who believe in this system. It's the same kind of thing. It's the same kind of program. The Hegelian dialectic and then some. Repeating over and over and over again. So I challenge people today, and I've been challenging people with every video that I put out that speaks in reference to this. If you, with your great intelligence and everything that you have, everything that you've already put, all that energy that you've put into the mind control program of heliocentrism, challenge yourself to put that same amount of effort, time, and focus into the mind control program that has all the mind control programs that have been inflicted upon humanity as a whole. Specifically, one of the most obvious ones, racism. Because for me, that's an obvious one that taps into the Western so-called civilization, which is the power grid of the earth itself, all over the earth itself today. Once you start disassembling that, that's like the core. It's the pride. It's like the white supremacy, the white pride in there. It's the pride in that system. Cut the legs out of that. Remove it. The only way you can start removing it from a societal program is if at first you acknowledge it from the inside out individually. And that's another piece of work a lot of people don't want to do because they don't want to look at their ancestry. They don't want to look at the work that needs to be done, the stories that need to be acknowledged. One obvious one another, and this is as critical as it is, as deep as it is, it's still very shallow. But the treaties that were broken by this system to the Native Americans, over 500 treaties. That's another style of not looking at information. Because if you look at that information, you're going to have to start asking and answering all kinds of other questions. But people can't do that because it requires too much change. So I think that's pretty much it. I just really wanted to close it out to set up the tone for the next video I wanted to set the tone of how these mind control programs aren't limited to just heliocentrism, just whatever. They're equally spread across the board of every interaction that you have in this reality. And one of the main ones is not just the experience of Earth, but the experience of the experiencer, the individuals. How have we been mind controlled to think, act, and feel a certain way? And once you start questioning that reality, once you start going into why that matters, you yourself inherently become a different person. You yourself start to change, and you set the tone for other people to change in that same thought, in that same expression. Just being open to it. For people who make content, make videos, just make a video about all the mind control programs out there that are out there. Make a video about, or a podcast, or talk about, or even talk to a friend, just one other person, about all the other things that we've been lied to about in society. Huge things that affect consciousness. Like I said, in reference to Tesla's information being suppressed. Well, racism suppressed the art, the soul, the inventions of people who were told that they were primitive, beasts, animals, through the racist programming. How many inventions how many things would have come into society if we were allowed to think outside of the idea that we're just animals and primitives, savages? How many inventions were suppressed? How much consciousness as a whole, energy, just think of that. The melanated people across the earth who were subjected to the idea of white supremacy over so many centuries, energetically, they were being held down to 10% at best of reality. They had an entire 90% of experience that was literally, legally, it was against the law to think and act outside of those mainstream programs that were legally saying that you are not human. You're an animal. You're a slave. You're nothing. We are the only people that matter. And now it's affecting everybody today, to where it's just the people in the university system, the people in politics, the people with money that's saying, if you don't have money, if you don't have education, if you don't have this education through the university system, if you don't have this, this, and this, you're just a primitive, savage heathen that deserves whatever you get. You deserve poverty because we're evolved. That's what rich people, that's what all these celebrities are doing right now. They're priding themselves in being more evolved than you. Their bank accounts represent being more evolved than you. That's why evolution and heliocentrism is so important to challenge and expand upon, because that's what's happening today. They're saying, oh yeah, nah, I got more money than you. That means you ain't shit. You don't even deserve to be here right now. What do you think they're doing with people who go into the military? That's what they're saying. Going into the army at 17, most people that go in, when I went in, most is because I had no money. I had no money, I had no options to have anything. And that's set up the way that the system is designed. So they make you go defend their empire. And you have to fight and die for their illusions. And you have to do that because why? If you had a bank account that was full of money, you wouldn't have to do that. So who's going to fight these wars? Ain't the people with all the money in their bank accounts. It's the people who are kept impoverished. If you can't see it's something wrong with that, I don't know how else to explain it. That's why talking about the experiencer, the mind control programs that have been inflicted upon the experiencer, not just the experience of Earth, but the experiencer. That's why speaking in reference to that is so important, and why tying in the experience of the experiencer is so important. Because by doing that, you at least set up the platform for people to think for themselves. At least open the door. Because you yourself have opened the door. If you, as a content creator or somebody with any kind of influence in society, has continuously avoided a particular topic, multiply that times hundreds and hundreds of thousands and millions and millions and millions of people. They're not going to do that because you haven't done it. Now, look at the other side. When you actually do plant that seed, when you do make that change, when you do that research, and then you share it with people, now you see an entirely different world. You see people flipping. Instead of hundreds and hundreds of millions of people not looking at something, now you have hundreds and hundreds of millions of people at least having the door being kicked open for them to look at something. They might not look at it. Fine. Ain't nothing wrong with that. It's only up to the individual to change themselves anyway. But at least the door is open. So that's what I have for this build today. Once again, if this is your first time listening to this channel, this is one of my first videos on SoundCloud. The other one I uploaded was just like a test. I'm going to re-upload some of my older videos on YouTube as audio on SoundCloud as podcasts. And if you're interested in hearing more, subscribe to the YouTube channel, Subtle Infinity. And also, if you're on YouTube, check out the SoundCloud Subtle Infinity. I'll link it in the description, and I'll start putting up new new builds on SoundCloud as well. I'm looking for a new sort of platform, possibly a platform that's gonna allow me to eventually get some kind of income flowing from some of the works that are being done. I'm still gonna produce content on YouTube. I'm still gonna put out free content here and there, but I would like to start getting some kind of, or at least working on opening up to some kind of return financially for some of this work, because it is a lot of work, and it's a part of this world. So if it's a part of this world, and the more resources that I have in my possession, the more work that I could do, the easier it'll be to produce content and expand the reach. Like even for SoundCloud, like I had to, you got to pay for the whole premium thing for uploading and all that other stuff. So every little bit helps. I'll figure it out. Right now, this is just one step. SoundCloud is one step. Then I'll start putting stuff on iTunes for podcasts. Right now, I'm getting pushback from iTunes for artwork, as far as like the dimensions of artwork and syncing or linking up SoundCloud with iTunes. But I'll figure it out. As of now, the plan is just to continue doing what I'm doing. Slowly but surely kind of pull back from YouTube and transition over to something like a podcast, like SoundCloud, and then go from there. I can actually do more when I'm just making audio. Like when I have to upload to YouTube, I gotta like I want to make good content, so I'll put a whole bunch of memes, or I'll put like some kind of video to mix it up, and that takes a lot of time, and it's nothing wrong with that, but I'm feeling like it's kind of slowing down. It was good to help with starting the information and sharing a lot and creating like that catalog, but now the information, I feel like it would be beneficial for me to get into a space to where I can just kind of like podcast it and just be like, all right, well, you know, this is what I'm talking about. This is what I would like to build on right now. This is how I'm seeing what's going on. And I think something like a podcast would be the way to go. And there's a lot of people listening to podcasts right now too. And I'll do a whole video going into, I'll do a short video on this channel on YouTube, explaining like that process and what it's all about, because I didn't know how it all worked, so other people can possibly get into it. I'll do that sometime soon, but this was just like a little note to the subscribers on this channel who would like to support even more so, and possibly have another platform to check out the information. SoundCloud is where I'm gonna be moving to now. I don't know how that's gonna work with the whole video part of YouTube. I obviously uploaded this video to YouTube right now, but I don't know how that's gonna work out when I get really in the groove of SoundCloud and start rolling with the podcast. But we'll see how it all comes out. So if you would like to support even more so, check out the SoundCloud link below. If you're on SoundCloud, check out the YouTube channel below. Subscribe to either one or both of them if you haven't, if this is brand new. And yeah, we'll see what happens. So thank you for joining me, and until next time, from all my relations, peace, love, and harmony.